Their grandparents had started the journey. Their parents had continued it. And now the children born in the cold metal corridors of the colony ship Amaranth knew nothing else but flight and fear. The Velori were not warriors, and they had never been warriors. They were a species of gentle beings with skin that glowed softly in shades of blue and purple. When they felt strong emotions, their civilization had lasted for 12,000 years, and in all that time they had never built a single weapon. They were scholars and healers and artists and philosophers. They believed that violence was the failure of intelligence and that any conflict could be solved through understanding and patience. They had been wrong. The Keth Dominion came to their homeworld 87 years ago. The Keth were conquerors who moved across the galaxy like a plague of locusts, taking what they wanted and destroying what they did not need. They wanted the rare minerals beneath Velori soil, and they wanted the Velori themselves as slaves to mine those minerals. The Velori Council sent their finest diplomats to negotiate. The Keth executed them on sight and broadcast the deaths across every communication channel. Within 3 months, the Keth had killed 4 billion. Velori, the survivors, fled in 7 colony ships, each carrying as many people as they could hold. The ships scattered in different directions, hoping that at least one would survive. Over the following decades, the Keth hunted them down one by one. The colony ship Eternal Light was destroyed in the Carthax Nebula. The colony ship Hope of Morning was captured near the Thesan border, and its passengers were taken to labor camps from which none ever returned. The colony ship New Dawn was betrayed by a species that had promised them sanctuary and handed over to the Keth for payment. The colony ship Bright Future suffered engine failure and drifted into a sun. The colony ship's Sacred Memory was found and destroyed, while its passengers slept in cryogenic chambers. The colony ship Last Chance made it to the edge of explored space before a Keth patrol caught up with them. Only the Amaranth remained 40,000. Velori lived aboard the ancient ship, packed into spaces designed for 15,000. They had been drifting through uncharted space for 6 years. Their engines damaged, their supplies running low. Their hope, nearly extinguished, Ambassador Thale was the leader of the Velori Council, an old male whose glow had faded to a dim flicker over the years of running. He remembered his homeworld, and he remembered the smell of flowers in the morning and the sound of children singing in the schools. He remembered his wife and his 3 sons, all of whom had died when the Keth bombed the capital city. He had kept his people alive for 87 years, and now he watched them slowly dying anyway. The ship's doctor, a young female named Cirith, came to him with her daily report. "We have lost 12 more to the sickness," she said, and her voice was tired and hollow. "The water recyclers are failing, and the food synthesizers can only produce enough for half our population. We need to ration further." Thale said, "If we ration further, the children will starve." Cirith replied. Thale closed his eyes, and his glow dimmed even more. He had made so many impossible choices over the years. He had decided who would live and who would die when they had to abandon damaged sections of the ship. He had ordered the destruction of their cultural archives to make room for more refugees. He had watched families separated and lovers torn apart by the cruel mathematics of survival, and still it was not enough. The Amaranth's chief engineer, an elderly male named Corvin, limped into the council chamber. "The main engine is dead," he announced, and there was no emotion in his voice because he had used up all his emotions years ago. "We have maneuvering thrusters only, and they will last perhaps another month before they fail as well." "Can you repair the main engine?" Thale asked. "I would need materials we do not have, and tools that were destroyed in the last attack, and skills that died with my apprentices." Corvin said, "We are drifting, and we will continue to drift until we hit something or run out of air." Thale sat in silence for a long time. Around him the council members waited, their glows flickering with fear and despair. They had come so far and survived so much, and now it seemed that the universe had finally decided to end their story. Send out distress signals? Thale said at last. To whom? Asked Counselor Myra, a middle-aged female who had once been a famous poet on their homeworld. We have contacted every species in this region of space. The Dasani demanded payment we cannot provide. The Morwai refused to respond. The collective offered to take us in as labor stock, which is slavery by another name. Send the signals anyway. Thale said, send them in every direction and in every language we know. Perhaps there is someone out there who will help us. Perhaps there is someone who is not cruel. The council. Members exchanged looks of doubt, but they did as he commanded. The signals went out into the void, carrying the desperate plea of a dying people. Days passed and no response came. The water situation grew worse and the food situation grew worse, and 3 more children died of the sickness that spread through the overcrowded ship. Thale began to write his final testament, a record of his people's history that he hoped someone might find after they were all gone. And then on the 7th day, a signal came back. It was weak and scratchy, and in a language that their translation system struggled to decode. But the words, when they finally came through, made Thale's glow brighten for the first time in years. This is the United Earth Naval Ship. Hammurabi responding to your distress call. How many are you and what do you need? We are coming. Thale read the message 3 times to make sure he had understood it correctly. He did not recognize the species name, and he did not recognize the ship designation. He knew nothing about these beings who called themselves human, but they had asked what the Valori needed, and they had said they were coming. No one had ever said that before. Respond to them. Thale ordered, and his voice was shaking. Tell them we are 40,000, and we are dying, and we need everything. Tell them we have nothing to offer in return. Tell them we are at their mercy, and we beg for their help. The message was sent, and the Valori waited for the first time in 3 generations. They felt something other than fear. They felt hope. Ambassador Kiro Kanko stood on the observation deck of the UN Hammurabi and watched the alien vessel grow larger in the viewport. It was enormous and ancient, and clearly dying hull breaches marked its surface like wounds on a body, and entire sections had gone dark. Where power had failed, the ship drifted without direction, pushed only by the faint momentum of its last course correction. How many people are on that thing? She asked Captain Chun, who stood beside her with his arms crossed. Our scans show approximately 40,000 life signs, Chun replied. The ship was designed for maybe 15,000 at most. They must be packed in there like cargo. Kira shook her head slowly. She had seen refugee crises on Earth, and she had worked in camps in Syria and Bangladesh and the flooded coastal regions of Southeast Asia. She knew what desperation looked like, but she had never seen anything like this. Bring us alongside, she ordered. Prepare the medical teams and the emergency supplies. And Captain, make sure our weapons are powered down. I do not want them to think we are here to hurt them. Chun nodded and gave the orders. Hammurabi moved carefully toward the alien ship, matching its drift, extending docking tubes with gentle precision on the other side of those tubes. The Valori watched with fear and hope in equal measure. Ambassador Thale had selected 6 council members to accompany him to the meeting. They wore their finest robes, faded and patched from years of wear. They carried no weapons because they had none, and they had never needed any. As they walked through the docking tube, Thale prepared himself for what he knew was coming. Every species they had encountered had demanded something in return for help. The Dasani had wanted their technology. The collective had wanted their labor. Others had wanted things even worse. The humans would want something. Tuthal had already decided that he would give them whatever they asked. He would sell his own people into slavery if it meant the children would survive. He would give up his own life without hesitation. He had nothing left to lose. The docking tube opened onto a wide corridor lit with soft white light, and there stood the humans. Thale had seen images of many species during his long life, but he had never seen anything quite like these beings. They were tall and solid with skin in various shades of brown and pink and tan. They had hair on their heads in colors of black and brown and yellow and red. Their eyes were small compared to Velorai eyes, but they held an intensity that was hard to look away from. One in front was a female with dark brown skin and hair twisted into elaborate braids. She wore a uniform of blue and silver and carried no visible weapons. She stepped forward and raised her hand in what seemed to be a greeting gesture. "Ambassador Thale," she said in halting Velorai. "I am Ambassador Kira Okonkwo of the United Nations of Earth. Welcome aboard the Hammurabi." Thale bowed deeply. "Ambassador Okonkwo, I thank you for responding to our signal. My people are grateful beyond words. Please, tell me what you require of us, and we will do everything in our power to provide it." Kira looked at him with an expression he could not read. "What we require," she repeated slowly. "Ambassador, we require nothing. We are here to help you." Thale waited for her to continue. He waited for the conditions. "The demands, the price." She did not continue. "I do not understand," he said finally. "You have traveled far to reach us, and you have brought a ship of war. Surely you expect something in return for your assistance." Kira glanced at her companions, a look of something like sadness crossing her face. "Ambassador Thale, you sent a distress call. You said you were dying. What kind of people would we be if we demanded payment from the dying?" Thale felt his glow begin to flicker uncontrollably. "Every species we have met has demanded something," he said, and his voice was barely a whisper. "The galaxy is not kind to the weak." "I know," Kira said. "Humans have not always been kind either. We have done terrible things to each other throughout our history, but we have also learned, slowly and painfully, that cruelty is not strength. Compassion is not weakness. You need help, and we can provide it. That is enough reason for us." She gestured to the corridor behind her. "Please, come with me. Our medical teams are ready to board your ship. We have food and water and medicine. We have engineers who can help repair your systems. And we have room on our other ships for your sick and your elderly and your children." Thale could not move. His council members stood frozen beside him, their glows pulsing with confusion and disbelief. Counselor Myra began to weep, tears of light streaming down her face. "Why?" Thale asked. "I have lived for 140 years, and I have never seen kindness given freely. Why are you doing this?" Kira was quiet for a moment. "Because you needed it," she said at last. "Because we could. Is that not enough?" Thale had no answering. His experience, it had never been enough for anyone over. The following hours, the humans proved their words with action. Medical teams in white suits moved through the Amarith, treating the sick, feeding the hungry, holding the dying. Engineers crawled through damaged sections of the ship, patching holes and restoring power. Soldiers, the ones Thale had feared most, carried children in their arms and sang songs to calm the frightened. One human soldier, a young male with pale skin and yellow hair, sat with an elderly Velorai female who was too weak to move. He held her hand and spoke softly to her, even though she could not understand his language. When she died an hour later, he wept. Thale watched all of this with wonder. He had expected exploitation, and he found compassion. He had expected cruelty, and he found kindness. Had expected to bargain for his people's survival, and instead, he was offered something he had forgotten existed. He was offered help with no strings attached. 3 weeks later, the Amarith arrived in orbit around Earth. The Valeria looked down at the blue and green world and saw oceans and forests and cities. Glittering with light, it was beautiful. Was alive, it was nothing. Like the dead worlds and empty stations they had passed in their long flight, Ambassador Okonkwo stood beside Thale as they watched the planet turn below them. "We have prepared a place for your people," she said. "It is in the southern part of an island called New Zealand. The climate is mild, and the land is green, and there is room for all of you. You will govern yourselves and live by your own laws. You will be free. Thale turned to look at her. You are giving us a home, he said. Yes, Kira replied. Is that not what you needed? Thale's glow brightened until he shone like a small sun. We have been running for 87 years, he said. We have lost everything. Our world, our people, our hope. And now you offer you as a home as if it were a simple thing. Kira smiled. It is a simple thing, she said. Home is just a place where you are safe and welcome. You are safe here. You are welcome here. This is your home now. For the first time in 87 years, Ambassador Thale allowed himself to believe that the running might finally be over. 12 years passed, and they were the happiest years that Valorai had known in nearly a century. The settlement in New Zealand grew from a cluster of temporary shelters into a proper town with homes and schools and hospitals and parks. Valorai, children, who had been born in the cramped darkness of the Amaranth, now ran through green fields and swam in clear rivers and looked up at a blue sky that seemed to go on forever. They learned human languages and human games and human songs. They made friends with human children who thought their glowing skin was the most wonderful thing they had ever seen. The adults found their place too. Valorasi doctors worked alongside human doctors, sharing medical knowledge that benefited both species. Valorai engineers helped design more efficient power systems and cleaner water purification methods. Valorai artists created works that blended two cultures, paintings that glowed with bioluminescent pigments and sculptures that combined Valorai flowing lines with human bold angles. Ambassador Thale, now very old and very tired, served as a representative to the United Nations. He sat in the great assembly hall and watched humans argue and debate, and sometimes even shout at each other. But he also watched them compromise and cooperate, and choose peace over war. They were not perfect. These humans, they had their own conflicts and their own problems and their own history of cruelty, but they were trying to be better. They were always trying to be better, and that was something Thale had never seen in any other species. The Amaranth had been repaired and placed in orbit around Earth as a museum. Human visitors came by the thousands to walk its corridors and learn about the Valorai journey. School children wrote reports about the refugees who had traveled across the galaxy. To find safety, universities offered courses on Valorai history and culture and philosophy. The Valorai were no longer alone. They were part of something larger. They were part of Earth. Thale allowed himself to believe that the nightmare was finally over. He was wrong on a quiet Tuesday morning in the 12th year. Long-range sensors at the edge of the solar system detected a fleet of ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. The ships were massive and black and covered with weapons. There were 16 of them. They were Keth Admiral Sarah Martinez of the United Earth Navy received the sensor data at 0347 hours. By 0400, she had identified the ships and confirmed their trajectory. By 0415, she had woken the Secretary General of the United Nations. By 050, the entire planet knew that the enemy had found them. The Keth commander, a warlord named Vreth, sent a transmission that was broadcast across all frequencies. Humans of Earth. The transmission said, "You harbor property of the Keth Dominion. The species you call Valorai belong to us. They were claimed by right of conquest 87 of your years ago. Surrender them to us immediately, and we will depart. Refuse, and we will take them by force. You have one of your solar cycles to comply." The transmission ended, and the planet fell silent in New Zealand. The Valorai watched the broadcast on screens in their homes and their schools and their workplaces. The children who had never known the Keth saw images of the warships and felt a fear they could not name. The adults, who remembered the homeworld, felt that fear rise up from where they had buried it and consume them whole. Ambassador Thale called an emergency meeting of the Valorai Council. "We must leave," he said, and his glow was dim with sorrow. "We cannot let these people die for us." They have given us everything, and we will not repay that gift with their destruction. The Keth are conquerors, Councilor Mara said. They have never lost a war. The humans are brave, but they are young, and their technology is primitive. If they fight, they will be slaughtered. We will find another ship, Thale continued. We will flee again. It is what we do. It is what we have always done. He stood and walked to the window. Looking out at the town they had built, children were playing in the street. Human and Velori together, their laughter mixing in the morning air. We will say goodbye, Thale said quietly. We will thank them for 12 beautiful years, and then we will go. That afternoon, Thale requested an emergency session of the UN Security Council. He was granted the floor, and he stood before the assembled representatives of humanity with his heart breaking in his chest. I come to you today with gratitude and with grief. It began 12 years ago. You saved my people from extinction. You gave us food when we were starving. You gave us medicine when we were dying. You gave us a home when we had none. You asked for nothing in return. And now an enemy has come for us. An enemy who has destroyed 100 worlds. An enemy who knows nothing of mercy or compassion. We cannot ask you to fight them for us. We will not ask you to die for us. We will leave. We will run. We will find another path. He paused and his glow flickered with emotion. Thank you for everything you have given us. We will never forget your kindness. Goodbye. He turned to leave. Secretary General Yuki Tanaka spoke before he reached the door. Ambassador Thale. He stopped and turned back. Tanaka was a small woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen decades of political battles. She did not look afraid. She looked angry. Ambassador Thale, you misunderstand the purpose of this meeting. We did not call you here to say goodbye. We called you here to inform you of our decision. She pressed a button and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed the orbital paths of Earth's defensive fleet. Dozens of warships moving into formation. The United Earth Navy is mobilizing. Tanaka said, every ship we have is being called to defend the solar system. Planetary defenses are being activated. Reserve forces are being mustered. Thale stared at the display. You cannot. He whispered, the Keth have conquered 100 worlds. You do not know what they are capable of. Ambassador, Tanaka said, and her voice was hard as iron. We know exactly what they are capable of. We have studied the records you shared with U.S. We've seen what they did to your homeworld. We have seen the massacres in the slave camps and the genocide. We know. She stood up from her seat. The Velori are not our property. They are not our guests. They are our neighbors. They are our friends. For 12 years they have lived beside us and worked beside us and laughed beside us. Their children play with our children. Their doctors heal our sick. Their artists enrich our culture. They are part of us now, and nobody takes what is ours. The chamber erupted in applause. Representatives from every nation stood and cheered and shouted their agreement. Thale watched them with tears of light streaming down his face. He had spent 87 years running from a galaxy that wanted only to exploit the weak, and now he stood before a species that was willing to die for strangers. Why? He asked when the noise had faded. Why would you do this? Tanaka smiled. Because you are worth fighting for, she said. Because kindness must be defended or it dies. Because if we turn you over to your enemies, we become no better than them. She walked down from the podium and stood before Thale. You are not running anymore. She said, not today. Not ever again. This is your home, and we defend our home. Thale fell to his knees and wept for the first time in his long life. He understood what it meant to be truly loved by strangers. Warlord Vreth stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, and looked at the tactical display with contempt. The humans had refused to surrender the Velorayth. Humans had actually refused in his 300 years of service to the Keth Dominion. Vreth had conquered 62 worlds. He had crushed species that were older and wiser and more technologically advanced than his own. He had never been refused. Lesser species always understood their place when they saw the might of the Dominion fleet. They surrendered or they died. Those were the only options. But these humans, these primitive apes from a backwater world at the edge of the galaxy, had chosen to die. It was almost amusing. Warlord, his sensor officer reported, the human fleet is moving to intercept us. They have approximately 100 vessels of various sizes. Their weapons appear to be chemical propellants and nuclear warheads. Their armor is simple metal alloys. Reth laughed. Metal and chemicals against Keth plasma cannons and molecular shields. This will not be a battle. This will be an execution. He turned to his communications officer. Open a channel to the human commander. I wish to give them one final chance to surrender. It would be wasteful to destroy them all when some might make useful slaves. The channel opened, and Vreth found himself looking at a human female in a dark blue uniform. She had graying hair and lines on her face and eyes that showed no fear. I am Warlord Vreth of the Keth Dominion, he announced. I offer you one final opportunity to surrender the Valari and preserve your species. Your fleet is primitive and your weapons are obsolete. You cannot win this battle. Spare your people unnecessary suffering and comply. The human female stared at him for a long moment. I am Admiral Sarah Martinez of the United Earth Navy, she said, and I offer you the same courtesy. Turn your ships around and leave our system. The Valari are under our protection. They will remain under our protection. If you attack, we will defend, and you will regret it. Vreth blinked his 4 eyes in disbelief. You threaten me, he said. You threaten the Keth Dominion. Do you understand what we have done to species far more powerful than yours? Do you understand that we have crushed civilizations that existed before your species learned to walk upright? Admiral Martinez did not flinch. Do you understand what we have done to those who threatened our home? She replied, we have fought and died for our world for 10,000 years. We have survived ice ages and plagues and wars that killed hundreds of millions. We have crawled back from the brink of extinction more times than you can count. You are not the first to threaten us. You will not be the last, but you will learn what every enemy of humanity has learned. We do not surrender. We do not give up our own. We fight. She leaned forward. Bring your fleet, she said. Bring your weapons and your soldiers and your centuries of conquest. We will be waiting. The channel closed. Vreth stared at the blank screen for a moment, then turned to his officers. Destroy them, he ordered. Destroy them all. The Battle of Seoul began at 0917 hours Earth time. The Keth fleet advanced in a standard conquest formation. Their 16 warships arranged in a wedge designed to break through enemy lines and scatter defending forces. They expected the humans to flee or surrender once the first ships were destroyed. They expected panic and chaos and easy victory. They did not expect the defiance. The human dreadnought was enormous and ugly. A massive block of metal and weapons that looked like it had been built by people who cared nothing for elegance and everything for destruction. It led the human fleet directly at the Keth formation, accelerating constantly, making no attempt to evade or maneuver. The Keth opened fire plasma. Bolts streaked across the void and struck the human cruiser Johannesburg. The ship exploded instantly. 800 human lives gone in a flash of light. The human fleet did not slow down. The Keth fired again. The destroyer Cape Town was hit and began to break apart. Escape pods launched from the dying ship, carrying survivors toward the relative safety of the inner system. The human fleet did not slow down. Vreth watched the tactical display with growing unease. These humans were not acting like any species he had ever conquered. They were not running. They were not panicking. They were accelerating. Warlord, his tactical officer reported, the human fleet is within weapons range. They are targeting our forward ships. And Warlord, they are launching missiles. Many missiles. The first wave of human nuclear missiles struck the Keth destroyer Glorious. Victory the molecular shields held against the initial impacts, but the humans had launched hundreds of missiles, and the shields could not stop them. All explosions tore through the Keth ship, and it began to list to one side. Fires burning its hull, the Defiance arrived moments later, did not try to match the elegant maneuvers of Keth warfare. It simply plowed straight into the Keth formation, firing every weapon it had, absorbing hits that would have destroyed lesser ships. Its captain, a human male named James Okonkwo, son of the ambassador who had first greeted the Valorai, screamed orders over the chaos of battle. "Target their engines," he shouted. "If they cannot run, they cannot escape. All ships, concentrate fire on their engines." The battle became a swirling chaos of ships and weapons fire, and explosions. Human vessels that were outmatched in every technical category threw themselves at Keth ships with a fury that defied logic when their weapons failed. They rammed when their engines died. They fired their remaining missiles. Point blank, carrier Sao Paulo was hit by 3 plasma bolts and began to break apart. Its captain, knowing the ship was doomed, ordered it turn toward the nearest Keth cruiser. The collision destroyed both ships. The cruiser Mumbai lost power and drifted helplessly toward the Keth flagship. Its crew armed every nuclear warhead on board and waited when the Keth moved in to capture the vessel. The Mumbai exploded with the force of 50 suns. It took the Keth destroyer merciless with its breath, could not believe what he was seeing. These humans were not fighting like soldiers. They were fighting like animals. They were fighting like creatures with nothing to lose and everything to protect. "Warlord," his tactical officer said, and there was fear in his voice. "We have lost 7 ships. The humans have lost over 60, but they are not retreating. They are still attacking. Impossible." Vreth growled. "No species fights like this. No species dies so willingly for others, but the humans did." Captain Asha Patel of the destroyer Chennai charged her damaged ship directly at a Keth battle cruiser, drawing its fire while other human ships maneuvered behind it. She died so that her comrades could live. Lieutenant Commander Wei Chun ejected from his crippled fighter and used his suit thrusters to reach a Keth ship. He planted explosives on its hull and detonated them manually. He died so that his planet could survive. 300 human pilots flew into a Keth formation knowing they would not return. They died so that their children would never know slavery. The battle lasted 9 hours. When it was over, 11 Keth ships limped away from the solar system, their weapons depleted, their crews decimated, their warlord wounded and humiliated. 5 human ships remained functional. Thousands of humans had died. Captain James Okonkwo, bleeding from a wound in his side, stood on the shattered bridge of the Defiance and broadcast one final message to the retreating enemy. "Go home," he said. "Tell the Dominion what you found here. Tell them Earth remembers. Tell them Earth protects. And tell them that if they ever come back, we will be waiting." The Keth fled. They had never lost a battle so completely, and they had never understood a species less than Earth. In New Zealand, the Valorai watched the surviving ships return. They lined the streets and the beaches and the hills. They raised their lights to the sky in the ancient Valorai gesture of mourning and gratitude, and they wept for the humans who had died for them. A primitive species from an unknown world had faced the Keth Dominion in open battle, and won, not through superior technology, not through greater numbers, not through cunning strategy or ancient wisdom. They had won through sheer stubborn refusal to surrender. They had won because they cared more about protecting strangers than preserving their own lives. The news spread across every communication network and through every trading post and diplomatic station. Species that had never heard of Earth suddenly wanted to know everything about it. Species that had lived in fear of the Keth began to whisper about hope and the Keth Dominion, for the first time in its 1,000-year history, did not pursue a fleeing enemy. Warlord Vreth returned to the Dominion capital in disgrace. He had lost 5 warships and over 40,000 soldiers. He had been driven away by creatures that were supposed to be nothing more than primitives. When he stood before the Dominion Council, he tried to explain what had happened. They would not stop. He said, "We killed them, and they kept coming. We destroyed their ships, and they rammed us with the wreckage. They died in the hundreds, and they did not care. They were not fighting for territory or resources or power. They were fighting for people who were not even their own species. I do not understand them. I do not understand them at all." The council listened, and they made a decision. Earth was placed on the forbiddance list. No Keth ship would enter human space again. The cost was too high. The humans were too mad. It was better to find easier prey elsewhere, and so the Velori were safe, not because they had run, not because they had hidden, but because a species they had barely known had chosen to stand beside them and fight. On Earth, the recovery began. The dead were mourned and honored. Memorials were built in every nation, listing the names of every human who had died in the Battle of Sol. The Velori added their own monument on the shores of their settlement, a tower of crystal that glowed with the combined light of 40,000 Velori. The inscription was written in both languages. Here at last we stopped running. Here we were given a home. Here they stood with us. We will never forget. Ambassador Thale, now ancient and frail, visited the monument every day. He would sit before it for hours, reading the names of humans he had never met, who had died for people they had only known for 12 years. He tried to understand them. He tried to understand how a species could care so much for strangers. He never fully succeeded, but he loved them for it. In the years that followed, word of Earth spread further across the galaxy. Other refugee species began to hear the stories. The Sani, who had been hunted by slavers for generations, sent a cautious message asking if the stories were true. The Morwai, whose homeworld had been destroyed by ecological collapse, asked if there might be room for them somewhere on the blue and green planet. The Keth, who had fled a machine plague that consumed their world, begged for help from anyone who would listen, and humanity answered each time the same way. How many are you? What do you need? We are coming. Ships were sent. Supplies were gathered. Land was prepared. The Dasani settled in the highlands of Scotland, where the cool air reminded them of their lost homeworld. The Morwai found a home in the Amazon basin, working alongside human scientists to restore damaged ecosystems. The Keth were given refuge in the deserts of Australia, where they slowly rebuilt their shattered culture. Earth became something it had never been before. It became a sanctuary. It became a beacon. It became a home for the homeless and a shelter for the hunted 20 years after the Battle of Sol. Ambassador Thale stood before the first meeting of the Galactic Compact. It was a coalition of 12 species, most of them refugees, bound not by power but by principle. Its headquarters were on Earth. Its charter was written in 20 languages. Its purpose was simple: to protect the weak and welcome the lost and stand together against those who would prey on the vulnerable. Thale had been chosen as its first chairman. He was very old now. His glow faded to a dim flicker, his body failing even as his mind remained sharp. But he had one more thing to do before he died. He had to explain humanity to the galaxy. He stood at the podium and looked out at the assembled representatives, humans, sat beside Velori, who sat beside the Sani, who sat beside Morwai. Species that had never met before were sharing meals and stories and laughter. It was beautiful. It was impossible. It was everything Thale had ever dreamed of and never believed he would see. I have been asked, he began, to explain to the galaxy what humanity is. I have been asked to describe them, to categorize them, to make them understandable to species who have never met them. I do not know if I can do this. I have spent 20 years among them, and I still do not fully understand them. He paused and gathered his thoughts. Humans are not saints. He continued. They carry darkness in them, old violence and old wounds. They have done terrible things to each other throughout their history. They have waged wars and committed genocide and enslaved their own kind. Their past is written in blood, but they are not defined by their past. They are defined by their choices, and every day, they choose to reach toward light. He looked at the humans in the audience and saw them watching him with tears in their eyes. When we came to them, we were broken and dying and without hope. We had nothing to offer them. We were strangers. From a distant star, we expected them to exploit us as every other species had tried to do. Instead, they fed us. They healed us. They gave us a home. And when an enemy came to take us away, they fought and died for us. Not because we were useful, not because we could repay them, but because we needed help and they could provide it. He felt tears of light streaming down his face. The Keth asked me once why humanity would risk everything for strangers. I could not answer them, but I think I understand now. Humanity believes in something that most species have forgotten. They believe that kindness is strength. They believe that compassion is courage. They believe that the measure of a civilization is not how it treats the powerful, but how it treats the weak. They taught us a word we had forgotten existed. He paused and looked out at the assembly. The word is home. Home is not just a place. It is a promise. It is the promise that you will be safe and welcome. It is the promise that someone will stand beside you when the darkness comes. Humanity made that promise to us, and they kept it. They keep it still. He raised his hand in the human gesture of farewell. I am old, and I'm tired, and I will not live much longer. But I die at peace. I die knowing that my people have a home. I die knowing that the galaxy has hope. I die knowing that kindness can win. That is humanity's gift to us. That is humanity's gift to the galaxy. May we all be worthy of it. He stepped down from the podium as the assembly rose to its feet in applause. Human hands reached out to steady him as he walked. Valerai voices sang the ancient song of gratitude, and somewhere in the distance, on the shores of a settlement in New Zealand, Valerai children played with human children in the golden light of afternoon. They did not know about the wars of the past or the politics of the present. They only knew that they were friends. They only knew that they were safe. They only knew that they were home, and that was enough. That was everything that was the gift humanity gave to the galaxy. Not ships, not weapons, not technology, just a single word, spoken freely and meant completely home.